All right. Well, hi, everybody. I am here with my friend and colleague, Jeannette Hill. And Jeannette is an intuitive and a coach. And I would love to introduce her to you. And Jeannette, I'd love to hear you talk a little bit about how you work with people and what really lights you up in terms of helping other people.
Mhm. The way I work with people is I really work with what I call working with spirit because I'm an intuitive and I'm also a medium. I really tune in intuitively to my guides, and if I'm working mediumistically with people, I'm definitely connecting to their loved ones on the other side. But I also do coaching. I do what I call intuitive soul coaching. And that's really where people want to get a little bit more clear about their purpose, their gifts, and their life direction. A lot of people come to me in times of transition, and they're also hoping to create or get started on some kind of holistic or heart-centered work. And they need support, and they need clarity about that. And then what happens along the way is a lot of what I do is because I have this background where I've got this master's degree in psychology, the hypnotherapy, like you, I've studied different types of energy therapy and healing. It kind of just all blends and goes with where the client needs to go. But there's a lot of mindfulness involved in the coaching, getting people in touch with their true self, with what's authentic for them, getting more in touch with their feelings and their emotions. Because sometimes, a lot of us will have these dreams or visions. And it's one thing to have that. It's another thing to then start taking the action toward that. And what happens is, it happens with me too, is the fears then will come up, the insecurities. And so then it's time to pause and really just deal with what's present, the emotions, the feelings, the beliefs or blocks that may be coming up. And that's where the mindful presence and the compassion and the self-compassion needs to come into play. So it's not really the kind of coaching where, like we were talking earlier, where there's an agenda and, this week there's this homework and next week there's this homework. It's really not that at all. It's really being present with the client, where the client is, what's up for that client in that particular time. Sometimes there may be some kind of action that they've taken that they want to move toward. And a lot of times there's a deep listening that needs to happen on my part. So they feel witnessed and they feel that someone's really present to them. And sometimes emotion comes up. Sometimes emotion needs to be released and healed. And sometimes it's validation. I feel a lot of it is really witnessing and validating people, because I think in a lot of times our culture, we're very busy. We have a lot going on, and people don't always have that time to have someone really deeply listening to them, really witnessing and validating what's going on with them in their life. And I think when you were saying what really lights me up in the work, what really lights me up is not even so much when I do love that. I do love the connecting with the spirit and getting intuitive guidance or mediumistic connections for people. But what I really love is the teaching part of it, and teaching people to do that for themselves, and to teach people how to trust their intuition and their inner guidance, and to trust and to know that they're really being supported by spirit. I'll call it different things. Spirit to me means the divine, God, universe, whatever you want to call that. And really helping people to understand that doesn't exist outside of themselves. It's really internally within them. And that the more that they practice mindful practices, whether that's meditation, journaling, good self-care, all of those kind of mindful practices, the easier it becomes for people to really sense and feel and know that divine presence within themselves. So that's really, I think, my real passion in this work.
Is helping people be able to do that for themselves.
Yes. And come from a place where they're much more grounded and centered and trusting in themselves, trusting in their guidance, and they feel a deeper sense of security and peace and joy, because it's no longer looking outside of themselves for that. It's being able to cultivate, knowing that's within them already, and cultivating the mindful practices through consistency where they can feel that, they can access that at any time. That's really what I love about the work.
That's beautiful. And it sounds like, did you set out to work with people that are looking to shift into healing and helping professions, or is that just kind of like who gets drawn to you?
It's who gets drawn to me. I mean, over the years, some people have one-time readings and they have not been going into the healing professions.
Mm-hmm.
But more and more what I noticed over the years doing readings is the vast majority of people were either going into the healing or holistic professions or going into some kind of creative entrepreneurial profession like writing or the arts. Or a lot of times they were already in a profession like that or wanting to be in a profession like coaching, massage therapy, some kind of holistic practitioner of some kind. I mean, I'm just naturopathic. There's just so many different things.
Right.
But that's what I noticed over the years. And so that's why I say that, because I've worked more and more with people in what I would call holistic types of professions.
Do you have any sense of why those people might be more drawn to work with you?
I think probably because of my background. I have they don't always know this, but I was a liberal arts major. I was an art major and an English major, and then got my degree in psychology. And I've studied a lot of different healing arts, Reiki, integrated energy therapy, past life regression, coaching. And I'm assuming that's why, is because I have that bent myself.
Yeah. I just find it fascinating that without you specifically saying this is who I work with, those are the people that have been most drawn to you.
Yeah. And even if people are in more conventional kinds of careers, what I've noticed is there's that piece missing that I think what I do, and very similarly to what you do, they want more being and less doing. They want to feel. Many years ago, I had a man who wanted to feel. He said God, but I would say spirit. He wanted to feel that presence more. So I think more and more, even though people come to me saying they want a particular goal, what I realized is what they really want is not so much the end goal, it is the feeling that you have within yourself, that you live with every day, whether or not you have that particular job or a certain amount of money or a certain amount of outer success. What I've seen more and more with the people that I work with is what's really up, is what's going on right now in their lives and how they really want to feel day to day. And what I really feel passionate about teaching people is that's going to help you get that outer goal. But first, we've got to really work on and be present to what's going on right now.
Right. It's an inside out kind of job.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Beautiful. And are there any of your skills that you feel like you draw on more than others in how you work with people?
I think the number one skill that I draw on is I do the same thing that I teach my clients to do, is I go inward. And so I'm doing two things simultaneously with every client, especially in the coaching, is I'm listening to them and I listen to their words, but on another level, I'm listening intuitively with the heart. And I feel what's underneath the words. So I'm feeling the emotion. I'm feeling what's not being said. And that's where the intuition comes in. So sometimes someone will be saying one thing, and I know it needs to drop deeper. I can feel that it's up here and not down here. So a lot of times there's the presence that you and I both, I know, practice in our personal life comes into play in this work, where I need to be fully present, and I need to really feel and hear what isn't being said sometimes. And that's I would say the number one skill I use.
That's beautiful. It's the words under the words, or what's not being spoken. That's often what needs to be brought forth. I've been finding that more and more myself as well. Yeah. And are there any particular practices that you engage in, like to prepare for a session?
Yeah, the two number one practices I would prepare for in a session would be, especially when I do readings, is I
Mm.
will meditate before, and I will directly begin to ask spirit for guidance beforehand. Not so much in the mediumship, because the mediumship I'll begin to make the connection with the person, whether in person or,
Can you
you know.
explain a little bit what the difference is between mediumship and the intuitive readings?
Yeah, so the intuitive reading and the mediumship both, I'll go into what I would call a light meditative state, which is prayer. I kind of clear my, well, I don't kind of, I clear my own energy out, so to
Right.
speak. I try to get myself out of the way, and I really try to go more deeply within and connect to my soul, to my spirit, and to go into the center of my being when I get my mind and my mind chatter out of the way. And
Mm.
then I open myself up and I say a prayer, and I ask that my guides, I happen to call on for archangels, Buddha, Jesus, Mother Mary, and then I'll call in my guides and the guides of the client that I work with, that I'm going to work with. And I'll ask to be given guidance for them, what's for their highest good, what is within their heart, what are their gifts, what is their purpose, why are, what is going on with them. So that's the intuitive piece. With mediumship, the difference is I try to just be in as clear and present state as possible, getting myself out of the way. And then as I begin to talk with the client, whether it's a video or over the phone or they're in person, is I then put out the call to spirit. And I basically, before both, I say a prayer asking to be used in service of this person before me. And then I begin to connect to whoever is there for them in spirit.
Mm.
And I'll begin to say, I feel a male or there's a female. I feel that this is, if I get the relationship or the approximate age, and then the loved one of the client will then begin to give me evidence, because I'm trained as what's called an evidential medium. And so
Mm.
they'll give me evidence of their personality, or they may give me evidence about their work they may have had, or they may give me indications of the home they lived in, or pastimes they enjoyed, and relationship dynamics with the client, or memories, a lot of memories.
Mm.
And so what happens is I will ask the client, does this make sense? Is this a yes or no? And I ask them to not feed me or give me, like, yes, and then they go on and on. It's like, don't tell me too much. It's my job to provide that this is an actual and real connection for you with your loved one.
Yeah.
And then what will happen is they will begin to give me a message for the client. And so it just varies from each client. I've had loved ones come through and tell me that the person in front of me has begun dating someone new. I've had them talk about homes they're thinking of buying. I've had them talk about looking at belongings that very morning, like clothing or items or letters
Right.
of their loved one, jobs, or just all sorts of things, health challenges maybe that they're going through, or they know that they're going to the doctor. It just varies.
Yes.
Whatever the loved one wants to help them with.
Right. So things to help the client really know that it's their loved one that's there.
Know they're there and know they're still part of their life now. Yeah. Yeah.
That's beautiful. So anything else that you would want people to know about how you can serve them? We have so many similarities. So I'm listening to you. I'm like, oh my God, this is just, it's waking things up inside of me, because you have such a beautiful way of phrasing things and of putting words to what's often, kind of intangible. And I think we were talking before, and you said something about softer skills or softer, tools and techniques, which are really some of the, I think, what's the most needed. And people, I think, don't always realize that.
Yeah. The way I would see it, talk about it for myself, is that I think I didn't know this until I was maybe in my late 20s. I really believe I've always had a little bit of a mystical bent to me ever since I was a child.
Yeah.
I was never really, even though I was brought up loosely Christian, it wasn't religion that I was attracted to. It was what I would call the divine. And I, as a 7, 8-year-old child, enjoyed reading the Bible the inspirational parts of it. I enjoy praying. And I always have been fascinated by what I would call the mystical.
Mhm.
And then what happened is when I was in graduate school, I got the kind of psychology degree I did because I could take electives and things like Christian mysticism, Eastern meditation, Kundalini yoga.
Right.
And I've just, and I wrote my master's, they didn't really call it a thesis, but like a thesis on spiritual healing. And I've always been fascinated by how the divine lives and how we exist in this earthly plane with very physical lives, and yet there is the divine around us, with us, and then not seeking at all to be an intuitive or a medium. That is not something I ever thought I'd be doing. It really came to me. It was almost like knocking on my door, like, yes, now let's begin, not so much to prove, but let's begin to give evidence to people, to help them, to support them, to know that they're not alone in their lives. That even though they can't see it, through practice, they can begin to see a little bit of signs and symbols and messages, and know that they're not alone in their lives through their struggles and challenges.
Nice. Yeah, that's so important. I think it is easy, especially these days. There's a lot of talk and writing about how we're so connected, and yet we're so lonelier than ever. And to realize that we're not just these little discrete beings in our little devices, but that we're all connected, and that we're connected to something much larger than ourselves.
Yes, and because I've had some personal experiences myself with kind of woo, someone might call them woo-woo kinds of experiences, but because also I hear, I see, and I feel, you know, intuitively, psychically, I know for me that there is something more, and that this is being, to me, orchestrated by something with much more wisdom and love than we have fully been able to embody completely as human beings. But my real belief is this is what we're trying to evolve toward, or trying our best through our fumbles and mistakes to kind of realize this is the purpose of life, is to be connected through our humanity, through our love for one another. And even though we all have suffering, we all have challenges, when we're able to find the greater purpose and meaning of that, and have compassion and open our hearts up to another, to me, that is the embodiment of the awareness of the divine in this life. And that it's not so much where religion might teach some of us that it's some being up in the sky, or it's some person giving us rules and things to do. I feel really it's more up to us as human beings to open our hearts up, to realize that we can embody that kind of love for one another and ourselves, how we live and breathe in our daily lives. It's not always easy to do, but that's how I've come to see it.
Yeah, and it isn't easy to do, and how beautiful that's what your work is really focused on, is helping people to be able to do that for themselves more, because that's what's going to help us to heal the world. If it's ever going to happen, that is what's going to do it. And so this gift that you have for really helping people to tune in to their own wisdom and their own knowing, and trust that, because you're reflecting that back to them, and you're shoring them up. They have the wisdom, they have the connection, they don't necessarily have the trust, or I think a lot of people kind of push it aside or belittle it or whatever. And what I hear is, first of all, that you embody it yourself so beautifully.
I try. I'm not perfect at it. I have my failings.
And yet you speak from a very solid, embodied place. And that, I know for me right now, that's like, I feel more awake and engaged and connected just through our conversation. So
yes, I feel a resonance with you. I can tell that our work has a lot of similarity.
Yeah.
And I think so much of this is really helping people really be who they really truly are, which is not the labels, not what they were told they should be or should do, not the judgments or the inner criticisms that we take on about ourselves, which is a lot of the stuff that's up here.
Right.
And I think a lot of it really is, it's a state of being. It's a lot of what Kai was saying, the work that you do. It's mindfulness. It's really resting in that place within ourselves where we just are. We feel that deep level of peace and presence. And to me, when you can get to that place through your practice, everything else falls away and there's just this deep peace that comes over you. And everything, it's okay. Everything will be okay. I'll figure this out, all that kind of stuff that we worry about as humans. And the more that I touch into that, the more of it that I want to feel and bring into my life, the more it becomes less challenging, I would say, to let go of the fear, to let go of the judgment. You see, because there's always existing right here that other choice of, it's like I can be over here and be in my stressed out, fretting state, or I can just kind of hop over here because it's really right here. And I can just go, yeah, that feels so much better.
Right. Well, I think we said something before, maybe before we were on camera, about, about getting from a state of human doing to human being.
Yeah.
And the vision that just came to my mind when you were talking about, standing in that place more, it's like when you're able to stand in that place more, there's less surface area for the fears and the negative thoughts and the history to kind of hook onto.
Yes, I love the way you put that. That's so true.
Like you become a smoother surface, so there's no place for it to hook.
Yes. And then it's also less about your own fears about yourself and how am I going to look or this or that, which our minds want to conjure up. What's really beautiful is it becomes more about, how can I then use what I've been given in this life to then give out back to another, to help another find peace or comfort or joy. And that's really where I believe that the joy comes in using your gifts. Is where you can let some of that fear and worry fall away. And you can see and really fully appreciate the gifts that you uniquely have and how another might benefit from that. And then that really just naturally brings joy to you, I feel, when you do that.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, that feels like a really great place to land. And I thank you so much. It's great getting to know you better and giving other people an opportunity to know who you are and what you have to offer. And I would encourage anybody to give you a call. I feel so uplifted and also kind of more solidly embodied from our conversation. So thank you.
Oh, thank you, Sharon. Thank you so much for taking this time with me. I really appreciate it and feel honored that you take the time to talk with me today.
Thank you. Be well.
Thanks. You too. Bye-bye.